Okay, well, today we're going to be talking about something known as intermodal transportation. Sounds like a very fancy word, but it's not all that terribly exciting. Intermodal, as it says right here, intermodal transportation is the use of two or more modes or carriers to transport goods, freight from shipper to consignee or the person that bought it. That could be a person, that could be a store. Okay. Special standardized containers are used for intermodal transport of cargo on trucks, freight trains, and ships. These containers are large rectangular boxes capable of being secured to special trailers. These durable steel containers are built so they can be transferred between different modes of transportation very easily. This eliminates the risks of directly handling shipments. Kind of the way that we talked about LTL freight and things getting damaged. It does not take that much to happen or to damage something when you're dealing with large pieces of equipment like forklifts and people are in a hurry, things happen. So, intermodal transportation. There's just all sorts of possibilities for intermodal transportation, but a lot of it, as it says here, does involve these durable steel containers. But let's talk about some of these things here, okay? You've got things like the rail, you've got, of course, the truck, you have the airplane, you have the container ship, or just the plain old ship. But regardless of what you are doing, intermodal transportation can be described as merely multiple modes of transportation are involved. Now, we've talked about air things, we've talked about ground things, we've even talked a little bit about ships. We'll talk a little bit more about ships today. We'll talk a little bit more about rail today. But intermodal can just be a combination of two modes of transportation. And when you start to think about it, that's really rather common. So let us move along. Okay. So back in the olden days, back when Mr. Skeen was a young lad and we were still in the covered wagons, I will say that doggone it, things were a lot different when we were talking about cargo and how it was moved in the past. How it was moved in the past. Yeah, look at that. The sailing ships, the horse drawn carriage. You've got guys lugging big loads onto the ship here. You got all sorts of stuff going on. You got people rolling barrels. Boy, that was just how it was. Okay. Shipping things from one part of the world to another meant that somebody physically manhandled it up to the dock. Okay, they would roll it or shove it or however they needed to do it, get it onto the ship. It was not a very easy process and it entailed a lot of sweat, a lot of labor, and it was costly loading these ships. Okay, and really, as far as this was concerned, it was a very inefficient process. It took a long time, so there was a big incentive not to be doing things from or moving things from across the world because it was such a pain to be able to get it onto the ships. And they only really spent time doing that for things that were very valuable. Okay, I mean, things from other side of the world that they could make a lot of money off of. Okay, you can think about things, I mean, from places such as India. I mean, there were tons and tons of tea leaves brought by the English to various parts of the British Empire throughout time. And they did it because they could make lots of money selling tea to all of the British people around the world, or the British subjects around the world. Okay. Same might be true for something such as silk coming from China. I mean, it was a very expensive, hot commodity that people would pay top dollar for. That's what you would spend lots of money on shipping across the world. Okay. But if you couldn't make a lot of money on it, there was no incentive for you to drag it across the world. Okay. So it was a pain. It was a pain doing this type of a picture here. Here's even better one. Okay, if that seems horrible right there, take a look at this one right here. This is one that is actually from the 20th century, and it is typically how cargo was moved in the early 1900s, pretty much all the way really throughout a lot of World War II, or up until the point of about World War II. And basically, what you've got is you have these huge cranes lifting in big piles of stuff. Okay, it was horribly. I mean, it just looks like a nasty process. You got a big pile of freight down here. I don't know if they even just dropped the whole netted thing down here and they cover it up with something else. I mean, it just does not look like a very efficient process. It looks like a rather back-breaking process. I mean, you got a steel bar coming across here. You got somebody that had to manhandle those things underneath the steel bar. You got a bunch of guys staring at it. They're probably about ready to hop into the pit here and start shoving stuff around. Hopefully they don't get this big load dropped on top of them. I mean, it just looks like a mess. But that was a fact of life on how they moved cargo. Yeah, it's a definite improvement from this picture right here, where they're dealing with horses and carriages and sailboats. Here, you've at least got a metal ship being driven by some sort of combustion engine, and it was definitely an improvement over this. However, this just looks ugly. Okay, now things changed. Okay. In class, I'm going to show you a video on something that radically changed not only transportation worldwide, but specifically intermodal transportation. Okay. I mean, picture if you loaded up a truck, like a semi truck or a small type of truck, you drove it to the dock, somebody had to offload it, throw it into this cargo netting thing here. A big crane would lift it up, plop it down into the ship here, and yeah, someone on the other end would end up taking it off. Some of your cargo might make it, some of it might not. I mean, it just doesn't look like a very good way to move stuff. So, innovation was on the horizon. The human being never ceases to amaze us. We will think of an easier and better way to do things. And that's where the video that I've got for you is going to come into play. I'm not going to make you watch that video here. I'm just going to talk, but we'll watch that in class and get some discussion going. Okay. So based on some of that, some of this other stuff might seem a little bit fast forward, but we're going to start talking about something that I know you have all seen. Let's take a look at what we're talking about here. Let's roll on the new invention, the container. And here's the video that we've got right here. Oh, so exciting, you say. Yes, oh, so exciting. Yet another video from Mr. Skeen, and yes, it is exciting. So, what is this exciting video talking about? Something that happened in the 1950s. Someone got the bright idea that they did not like to do that stuff. They wanted to think of an easy way, a lazy way to be able to do stuff. And there's not really anything wrong with being lazy when it saves labor, as long as you're still doing the job right. Laziness is encouraged. Okay. I would oftentimes encourage my supervisors and managers to cut labor. Here, this would drive me crazy if I saw all these people standing around looking at the crane move stuff. This guy's standing, they're all standing, staring. Drives me crazy. Okay. Now, somebody has thought of an invention to make Mr. Skeen not so crazy. Let's take a look at it. The container. Now, like I said, most of you have seen the container before, and let's take a look at what we're actually talking about. Here is how cargo is moved today. If that's not the most impressive picture of a ship, I don't know what is. That is an amazing picture right there. I mean, it looks like Legos gone wild. Okay, not only is stuff stacked down here underneath the ship's top here, but it's stacked. What do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 high above the top of the ship. Okay, that is crazy. I'm not even going to bother counting front to back. That is nuts. It is very impressive. Okay, these are all steel containers. These are all containers that are able to be linked together, side to side, top to bottom. Okay, there is nothing for the most part that is going to make these containers fall over, although periodically they will hit very ugly, rough seas, and then lo and behold, things like these fall off. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so this is a container ship. Okay, there are lots of container ships around the world. Some are big, some are little. This is one of the big varieties. Okay, very impressive, as I said, and hopefully you agree that it's impressive. It is a lot of freight moving at once. Okay, let's just take a look at this. Okay, imagine each one of these boxes. How big do you think each one of those little boxes or little squares or rectangles on the ship actually is? Okay, I mean, what do you think? It's like each one of them is like 10 feet long or something like that, maybe 20 feet long. I mean, those are pretty big size, but I will tell you that every single one of those steel boxes is more than likely, let me say this again, more than likely 48 feet, or pardon me, 40 feet long, excuse me, 40 feet long. Okay. That's for the most part practically a full-sized trailer out on the road. And I know that you've seen these things up close. We'll get a closer view of some of these things, but you've seen them around. These are containers made of steel. Okay, let's take a look at what we've got here. Okay, intermodal transportation, it's not new. The practice first used in the 18th century in England, and not so much, but yes, it might have been. In the 1950s, the steel intermodal container became the standard. It was based on design specs provided and developed by the U.S. Department of Defense. There's that military legacy. Why do we want that? We want to be able to move stuff fast. We want to be able to move stuff efficiently. We want to move stuff around the world and be able to feed troops so they can be lethal. Okay, so let's talk about this. Containers. Look at that. You got all sorts of different sizes of containers. But in quickly looking at this, let's just take a look. If this right here, the 40-foot container, is what each one of these things is, okay? Let's take a look here. You could get derivatives of the 40-foot container. You could get two 20-foot containers, sure. You could get four 10-foot containers. I will tell you, I have never seen a 10-foot container either going down the road or actually had one loaded myself, but they exist. Okay, I'm told. I've never seen one. This graphic is telling me that there is, but I will tell you the most common, the overwhelming most common type of container is this 40-foot container. Okay, second is the 20-foot container. Okay, so if you take a look at this, this would make a very nice little Lego block type of setup here. Okay, you could take a couple of these and get the equivalent of one of these. You could take four of these if they actually exist and get one of these or two of these. I mean, you got all sorts of possibilities to be able to build a nicely stacked container ship like that. So let's talk a little bit more containers. Steel, steel, steel. These things are hard as nails. Okay, these things are tough. They get a lot of abuse, but they are tough, and for the most part, they are indestructible. That's why sometimes people are now building houses out of these things. Put a little insulation inside of them, and you got a pretty sturdy house. Okay, now let's take a look here at the end of these containers that you see right here. I will tell you that this is the exact, let me say that again, the exact same type of door openings that you would see at the end or the tail of a trailer. A 53-foot trailer, a 48-foot trailer, some type of a trailer that would be rolling down the road in the United States. You would see this type of door fastening. Okay, so here's what you've got. you've got a very nice long container. You can jam all sorts of stuff in it. It's probably just about the same height as a regular truck. These are all uniform standards, okay? Every single container is exactly the same measurements, okay, which is great. Again, for these guys and their building block exercise up above. Okay, so it's basically ready to turn into a truck. Yes, it's going to turn into a truck, and I'm going to show you how. Let's keep rolling here. Okay, so the view from behind looks like a truck trailer. Yes, it does. However, it has no wheels. Okay, right around here is where a seal could be affixed. Okay, and if you affix the seal to one of the doors, it would break if one of the doors was opened. Okay, so sometimes they seal up both sides, but technically you only have to seal up one side. You can see how one set of doors folds over the other. And if you have something on one side, they're not going to be able to get into this side of the container without opening this side. So basically, you only need to seal over here and put padlocks on things over here, but they give you the option to be super secure and all that good stuff. Okay, but here's our container. This looks to be one of the 20-foot varieties down here. I want you to look down here at the bottom. These things right here are going to come in handy. You can sort of see that a container could be fastened together to another container on the front and to the side by perhaps running something through them. Yes. Okay. And then all of a sudden, it's very secure at this corner. Do the same thing over here. It's secure at that corner. Doing something over here. It's secure at that corner. Hey, guess what? They're up at the top too. Nothing is going to move this container or the ones surrounding it once they are fastened in place like that. And it's not just a matter of stacking them. As you see, these things are going to very soon take a trip. So they've taken a trip across an ocean. Maybe it's coming from Europe. Maybe it's coming from Asia. The vast majority of things are coming from Asia. So they take a boat. Okay, they hit the port of Seattle. They hit the port of Oakland. They hit the port of Los Angeles, Long Beach, San Diego. Okay, they hit a port and they get offloaded. Okay, we'll take a look at some of the offloading action. Let's take a look here. Okay, container on the water. Yes, via boat. Okay, pretty good. Capacity for these types of ships can be close to 15,000 of the 20-foot varieties like this. Okay, although if you look at it, you can tell that these are rectangular in shape, thus they are the 40-foot varieties. Okay, but the very biggest of these can be I mean, they can hold 15,000 20-foot containers or boxes. Okay, so let's see. So you can do a lot of exciting things with these things. You can come down here and you can put them on a rail car. Okay, I mean it hits Long Beach, and lo and behold, you put it on a train car like this and stack a couple of them. Here you see two 20s with a 40 stacked on top of it, two 20s and a 40, two 20s and a 40, 20, 20, 40. Here we've got a 40-40. It doesn't matter. They're all interchangeable. They can all lock together. It's all good. Okay, so let's take a look-see at what we've got. Okay, so it can basically go from Long Beach. Maybe the ultimate destination for one of these boxes is to go somewhere in the middle of the United States, throw it on a rail train, and down the rails it goes. It might stop somewhere in the middle part of the country, somewhere that is close. Maybe the train will reroute it several different places, but ultimately the train will take it fairly close to its final destination. But it's not done. So it's taken a ship. It's now on the rail. Okay. Sometimes it takes a long ride on the rail. Sometimes it takes a short one. But unless it is really close from where it hits the port, probably the chances are it's going to go on a rail. Okay, if it's going to somewhere in Los Angeles from Long Beach, well, then it might go directly onto the back of a truck, which is where we are going to see next. Container on a truck. Okay, now this is a pretty first and foremost, there's a very large overhead crane that has gotten these things to be in the stacks that they are. However, to do some of the more finite work, they use very large forklifts. You got to think that this thing is very powerful because a 40-foot container can weigh somewhere close to about 50,000 pounds. Okay, they don't ever want to have it exceed more than 50,000 pounds, but they are essentially then going to put it onto a trailer. I won't call it a flatbed trailer. It kind of looks like a flatbed trailer, but you'd kind of refer to this as a chassis. Okay, and basically this guy is going to set it down directly onto some little metal spikes here that will latch into the corners, and that thing is coming close to not moving at all. Okay, let's continue. Okay, a typical example of intermodal freight transportation is rail, truck, ship, and then truck. Okay, well, I don't know if I like that. I would say that probably the most common way is it comes from a manufacturer in some country, let's say China. Okay, it goes on a truck, it goes to a port, it gets lifted up onto a cargo ship, it goes across the Pacific in a couple weeks, then it gets offloaded, it then goes on the rail to somewhere else, and then when it gets somewhat close to the final destination, they throw it onto it. Okay. The truck transport between the rail terminals and the ocean ports is a specialized form of trucking, often called drayage. Very strange name, drayage. But it is something that is all too common in moving these containers around. Drayage, the type of trucking of moving containers around. Drayage. This is usually provided by dedicated companies who provide only this type of service. They only move containers. Okay. An example of how this transportation scenario would progress would be the truck bringing an empty container to a shipper to pick up a load. Okay, chances are they're going to, I don't know, almost I have ever dealt with are ones that are oftentimes stacked. Freight is stacked on the floor. However, sometimes it's not impossible to think that they might not put pallets on it. But if you're going to ship something across the world and you're paying for a full container and you can jam as many as 50,000 pounds on it, it's probably in your best interest to jam 50,000 pounds on it. Okay, get your money's worth. Okay, the container would be loaded with freight by the shipper and then taken to the railroad yard. There would probably, well, not probably, there is a seal that then gets applied. No locks, because I hate to say it, if you're shipping it across the ocean, chances of someone on that other end probably having some sort of key to that specific lock are slim to none. Even if you're a big company and you have really good communication, it's probably just going to have to get cut off anyway. So they use seals, and these seals, I hate to say, are not like the little tiny flimsy ones that are oftentimes applied to domestic trailers or truckload carriers that we've talked about, but these are the types that are very beefy, I guess I'll call them, strong steel type seals that you are not going to be able to break it with your finger the way you can a plastic one, but you are going to have to use a bolt cutter. Okay, something that if you really want in the container and steal what's inside, you can, but you got to expend a little bit of effort in order to be able to do that. Okay, so let's see, it's then put on a train, moved to its destination. The destination city is removed from the train and delivered a truck to the consignee, where the contents of the container are unloaded. The container is then empty and ready for another load. Okay, there are tons of containers floating around in the world. Once upon a time, they were made exclusively in the United States. Now, guess what? Now they are all made in China. Okay, so here's a few things to consider when deciding whether intermodal transportation is a good fit for your shipments. Okay, intermodal transportation is most suitable for intermediate and finished goods and loads of less than 25 tons. 25 tons equals 50,000 pounds. Okay, the longer the distance a shipment needs to travel, the more likely it is that intermodal will be a good choice. Freight moving more than 300 miles or longer than 1 day by truck are great candidates for intermodal transportation. Cargo with intermediate values are most likely to be moved via intermodal, with high value ones oftentimes being sent via more direct methods such as air freight slash cargo, and low value shipments frequently travel via rail or ocean. Okay. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, I mean, using these containers can be somewhat of a slow process. A lot of times they are involving rail. Rail, I mean, sometimes you see trains stopping progress on the road that you were on, and you were seeing them slowly go by. I mean, when they are out in the open, they can go pretty darn fast, but when they are going through highly traveled areas in towns and cities, they slow up. It's the law, and you lose a lot of time. So it's nowhere near as fast as using some sort of a truckload carrier. However, if you're moving something coast to coast and it makes sense to be using the rail, and deadlines are not necessarily something that is highly critical, I will tell you that intermodal is your route to go. Okay, let's take a look. Intermodal transportation is a good selection when cargo flows needs to be continuous and in similar quantities. For example, if you're sending multiple LTL shipments for the same, okay, let's just get this straight here. I mean, we're going to talk about a couple of things in terms of, we're going to talk a little bit in the following video as far as what using LTL and truckload type shipments. But I think the thing that you need to remember here, continuous flow, okay, in similar quantities. That's something that I don't think you can perhaps stress too much when it comes to intermodal transportation. Things on the rail sometimes slow down. Things on the rail sometimes, strangely enough, they somehow jump each other in. It's sometimes not crazy to ship something on Monday and have it arrive via intermodal the following Monday, but something that you actually shipped after your Monday shipment has actually arrived there either on the same day or the same time. Okay. Again, if you have a continuous flow and you are not looking at deadlines, yes, this is the route for you. However, if it is something that is critical, that if you are going to run out of something and your business is going to go under unless you get that stuff, intermodal can be a little bit tricky unless you've got a lot of supply in the pipeline. Yes, it is cheaper when you move stuff on the rail, cheaper when you move stuff intermodal. However, it can be subject to delays from time to time. Okay. So that's kind of an intro to intermodal. I mean, intro to the fact that, yes, they're coming across on very large ships. Okay, that's generally the first big step that an intermodal container will take. However, if it's coming from China, it's going to take a truck to the port when it gets thrown onto a boat that looks like this. It's going to go across the ocean. It's going to get offloaded, and it's either going to get stuck onto a train, or if it's local, it might get thrown onto this, or after it's taken its train ride across the United States, then it's nearby, and then it gets thrown on one of these chassis right here, and then you're off to the races. Okay. Again, I think that intermodal is a great way to go, but there are some drawbacks. Okay. So I will stop droning on there. We'll see what sort of discussion this creates. Anyway, I will stop, and that's it.